Some people say the eyes are windows to the soul. But what if those windows never close? What if they just watch? My name is Sarah Chen, and I'm about to tell you about Marcus Holloway, the man who never blinked. This isn't just another ghost story or urban legend. This is about revenge that transcended death itself, about justice served cold from beyond the grave, and about the terrible price of cruelty. If you're listening to this in the dark, you might want to turn on a light, because after tonight, you'll understand why some people deserve to be watched forever. The fluorescent lights of Blackwood Psychiatric Hospital flickered with their usual arrhythmic pulse, casting dancing shadows across the corridor's yellowed walls. Dr. Evelyn Ross had walked these halls for 15 years, yet tonight something felt different. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting. "You need to see this," Nurse Patterson's voice crackled through the intercom. Tight was something Evelyn had rarely heard from the veteran nurse sphere. Evelyn quickened her pace toward Ward C, her sensible shoes squeaking against the linoleum. Room 237 stood at the end of the corridor, its reinforced door slightly ajar. That alone violated protocol. The door should never be open. Inside, she found Patterson standing frozen, her clipboard trembling in her hands. On the bed sat Marcus Holloway, exactly as he'd been for the past 3 years, upright, motionless, staring at the wall with those unsettling gray eyes that had given the hospital staff nightmares. But something was different tonight. He spoke. Patterson whispered. After 3 years of catatonia, he just spoke. Evelyn felt her pulse quicken. Marcus Holloway's case had been her white whale, previously successful investment. Banker who'd suffered a complete psychological break 3 years ago. The police had found him in an abandoned warehouse standing over the body of Thomas Reeves, a local businessman. Marcus had been covered in Reeves' blood, yet forensics proved he hadn't laid a finger on the victim. Thomas Reeves had died of a massive heart attack, his face frozen in an expression of pure terror. The most disturbing detail? Witnesses reported that Marcus had been standing in that exact position, staring at Reeves' corpse, for approximately 18 hours before police arrived. He hadn't moved, hadn't blinked, hadn't looked away. What did he say? Evelyn asked, approaching the bed cautiously. He said, "They're coming for the others now." Patterson's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Then he said a name. Detective James Morrison. The name sent ice through Evelyn's veins. Morrison had been the lead investigator on the Reeves case. He'd retired shortly after, citing health reasons. But Evelyn had heard whispers about Morrison's obsession with the case, his insistence that something supernatural had occurred in that warehouse. Marcus's eyes suddenly shifted, focusing on Evelyn with an intensity that made her step backward. His lips moved, forming words in a voice that sounded like wind through a crypt. "Dr. Ross, you want to know what happened? You want to understand?" His head tilted at an unnatural angle. "Then I'll tell you. I'll tell you about the 5 men who destroyed my daughter. I'll tell you about revenge that death couldn't stop. And I'll tell you why Detective Morrison should be very, very afraid." Marcus Holloway had been a different man then. Successful, confident, a widower, raising his teenage daughter Lily with fierce devotion after his wife's death from cancer. Lily was 17, brilliant and beautiful, with her mother's green eyes and Marcus's stubborn determination. She'd just been accepted to MIT full scholarship. "Dad, I'm going to Sarah's house to study for finals," Lily had said that Friday evening, kissing his cheek. It was the last normal moment of Marcus's life. Lily never made it to Sarah's house. She was found 3 days later in a drainage ditch off Highway 9, barely alive. The doctors at County General worked for 6 hours to stabilize her. When Marcus was finally allowed to see her, his daughter, his brilliant, vibrant daughter, could barely speak through her broken jaw. Her body was a canvas of bruises, cigarette burns, and worse. The police investigation revealed a nightmare. 5 men: Thomas Reeves, James Morrison, David Chen, Robert Ashford, and Carl Winters had been running an illegal operation. They'd spiked Lily's drink at a party she'd stopped at briefly, then taken her to a warehouse where they'd filmed their assault for their dark web clientele. But Marcus's nightmare was just beginning. The 5 men had connections. Reeves was wealthy and influential. Morrison was a decorated detective who'd spent 20 years building relationships throughout the justice system. Ashford's family owned half the county. Chen was the assistant district attorney. Winters was a judge's nephew. The case fell apart like tissue paper in rain. Evidence was mishandled. Witnesses recanted. Chain of custody was questioned. One by one, the charges were dropped or reduced to misdemeanors. Marcus spent his life savings on lawyers, on private investigators, on anyone who might help. Nothing worked. The 5 men walked free, their reputations barely scratched. Some of them even had the audacity to send Marcus threatening letters, warning him to let it go and move on. Lily never recovered. The physical wounds healed, but the psychological damage ran too deep. She stopped speaking entirely, stopped eating. 3 months after the attack, Marcus found her in the bathtub, her wrists opened. A note beside her that simply read, "I'm sorry. Daddy, I can't anymore." At her funeral, Marcus stood by the graveside, numb, hollow, empty. Something inside him died that day, buried alongside his daughter. But something else was born, something patient and cold, and utterly pitiless. The weeks after Lily's death passed in a blur. Marcus didn't eat, didn't sleep. He sat in his study, surrounded by photographs of his daughter, evidence files, police reports. His friends tried to reach him. His brother flew in from Seattle, begged him to get help. To talk to someone, Marcus just stared at the wall. That's when it started. The not blinking at first, was involuntary. His body so consumed by grief and rage that even automatic functions began to fail. Then it became something else, something purposeful. Marcus discovered that when he focused his entire being on a single point, when he poured all his hatred and pain into his gaze, something responded. The first time it happened, Marcus had been staring at a photograph of Thomas Reeves, the ringleader of Lily's attackers. Marcus had been sitting there for hours, his eyes burning, his mind replaying every detail of what those men had done to his daughter. And then suddenly, he felt a connection, like a thread pulling taut between himself and Reeves, wherever he was. Marcus could see through Reeves' eyes. He could feel the man's heartbeat, smell the expensive cologne, taste the scotch Reeves was drinking. And Reeves could feel Marcus watching. The next morning, Marcus learned that Thomas Reeves had suffered a severe panic attack in his home office, requiring hospitalization. The man told doctors about nightmares, about feeling watched, about seeing gray eyes in every reflection. Marcus smiled for the first time since Lily's funeral. He finally understood what he had to do. He began to practice, to refine his newfound ability. Hours turned into days of absolute focus, learning to extend his consciousness across the distance, learning to project his presence into the periphery of his target's awareness. It defied explanation, defied logic, but grief and rage had opened something in Marcus that shouldn't exist, a crack in reality through which his will could flow. The technique required absolute stillness, absolute focus, and absolutely no blinking. Every blink broke the connection, forced him to start over. So Marcus taught himself not to blink. Hours at first, then days. His eyes dried out, became bloodshot, but he didn't care. This was his purpose now. His only reason to continue existing. Thomas Reeves had been sleeping poorly for weeks. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw them, those gray, unblinking eyes, watching him from the darkness. His doctor prescribed sleeping pills, anti-anxiety medication. Nothing helped. Reeves had dealt with guilt before. In his line of work, some moral flexibility was necessary. But this was different. This wasn't guilt. This was the suffocating sensation of being prey. Something patient and malevolent stalking him from just beyond his perception. He started seeing the eyes everywhere. In his coffee's dark surface, in his bathroom mirror, lurking behind his own reflection, in the faces of strangers on the street, always watching, never blinking. "You're having a breakdown," his therapist said. Possibly guilt-induced psychosis. "We should consider inpatient treatment." But Reeves refused. He was Thomas Reeves. Damn it. He controlled senators, judges, entire industries. He wouldn't be defeated by his own mind. The night it happened. Reeves was alone in his study, drinking scotch and trying to convince himself he was fine. The grandfather clock struck midnight. The house was silent except for the ice cubes melting in his glass. Then he felt it. That familiar crawling sensation on the back of his neck, slowly dreading what he'd see. Reeves turned toward his study's large bay window. Marcus Holloway stood on the other side of the glass. Reeves screamed, stumbling backward, his drink shattering on the hardwood floor. But Marcus didn't move, didn't blink. Jess stood there in the garden, 30 feet away, his gray eyes locked onto Reeves with the intensity of a laser. "Security," Reeves shouted into his phone. "There's an intruder. Get here now." But when he looked back, Marcus was gone. The garden was empty. Except he could still feel those eyes, watching, waiting. Reeves ran through his mansion, locking doors, closing curtains, turning on every light. His security team arrived within minutes, searched the property, found nothing. No footprints in the garden, no signs of entry. There was a man, Reeves insisted, his hand shaking. Marcus Holloway. He was right there. The security chief exchanged glances with his team. Everyone knew about the Holloway situation, the accusations, the trial, the girl's suicide. This looked like paranoid delusion. After they left, Reeves sat in his panic room, surrounded by monitors showing every angle of his property. He'd be safe here. No one could reach him. Then, on one of the monitors, he saw it. A face in the static. Gray eyes, unblinking, staring directly into the camera. Reeves' heart hammered against his ribs. He switched cameras. The eyes were there too. Every monitor, every camera, those same gray eyes watching him. "Please," Reeves whispered. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what we did, please." The lights in the panic room flickered. And suddenly, Marcus was there, not on the monitors, but in the room with him, standing in the corner, his eyes boring into Reeves' soul. Thomas Reeves' heart, already strained by weeks of stress and fear, simply gave out. He clutched his chest, gasping, stumbling toward the door. But his legs wouldn't work. His lungs wouldn't draw a breath as darkness closed in. The last thing Thomas Reeves saw was Marcus Holloway's face, inches from his own. Those gray eyes finally showing the first hint of emotion, satisfaction. Dr. Evelyn. Ross sat across from Marcus in the hospital's interview room, a tape recorder running between them. His story had taken 2 hours to tell, his voice never wavering, his eyes never blinking even once during the entire recounting. "Quite a story, Marcus," Evelyn said carefully. "But you understand that what you're describing is impossible, supernatural. The human mind doesn't work that way." Marcus's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. "I never said I was human anymore, Dr. Ross. That part of me died with Lily." "What's left?" Paused, his gaze intensifying. "What's left is something else. Something that won't stop until all 5 men have paid. Thomas Reeves is dead. You were found with his body. If there are others, Morrison, Chen, Ashford, Winters, you need to let the police handle it." "The police?" Marcus laughed, a sound like grinding glass. "Detective Morrison was the police. He was there that night, Dr. Ross. He held my daughter down while the others—" His voice finally broke, just for a moment. "The police had their chance. They failed. Justice failed. So I became justice." Evelyn's phone buzzed. A text from the hospital administrator. "Turn on the news." Now, she pulled out her phone, navigated to a news stream. The headline made her blood run cold. Breaking, Assistant DA David Chen found dead in locked office. Police suspect heart attack. The timestamp showed. Chen had died approximately 30 minutes ago while Marcus had been sitting right here. Telling his story, Evelyn looked up at Marcus, her professional skepticism crumbling. "How I told you, Dr. Ross. Death didn't stop me. Nothing will stop me. Not until they've all felt what Lily felt. The fear, the helplessness, the absolute certainty that no one is coming to save you." The lights in the interview room flickered, and somewhere across the city, Detective James Morrison woke from a nightmare, his heart pounding. only to find a pair of gray eyes staring at him from his bedroom mirror. As that never, ever blinked, Detective James Morrison hadn't slept properly in 3 years. Not since the Holloway case. Not since he'd helped his friends walk free from the worst thing he'd ever been part of, he'd told himself at the time. They'd just been having fun. That the girl had been willing. That the drugs were her idea. But late at night, when the bourbon couldn't drown out the memories, Morrison knew the truth. They'd destroyed an innocent girl. And when she'd tried to speak up, he'd used every connection. Every dirty trick he'd learned in 20 years on the force to make sure justice never found them. Then Lily. Holloway had killed herself. And Morrison's nightmares began. Now, staring at his reflection in the bathroom mirror at 3:47 a.m., Morrison saw something that made his bladder clench with fear. Behind his own bloodshot eyes in the mirror, another pair of eyes stared back, great, unblinking, filled with an inhuman patience. "No," Morrison whispered. "No, you're locked up. You're in Blackwood. You can't." His phone rang, the sound splitting the silence like a scream. The caller ID showed Blackwood Psychiatric Hospital. Detective Morrison. Dr. Ross's voice was tight, controlled. "I think you need to get somewhere safe. Marcus Holloway he's been talking about you. About what happened to his daughter." Morrison's laugh came out harsh, desperate. "Safe. Lady, I've got a security system that could guard Fort Knox. I've got a loaded .45 on my nightstand. I am safe. He killed David Chen tonight. While sitting in my interview room, I don't understand how, but Morrison hung up. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the phone. Chen was dead? That meant only 3 of them left. Ashford, Winters, and himself. He splashed cold water on his face, willing his heart to stop hammering. When he looked up again, the eyes in the mirror were gone, just his own reflection, pale and sweating and terrified. Get it together, he told himself. It's just stress, guilt. There's no such thing as the lights went out in the absolute darkness of his bathroom. Morrison heard it, breathing. Slow, steady breathing that wasn't his own. "Who's there?" His voice cracked. He fumbled for his phone, for the flashlight, but his trembling fingers couldn't find the button. Then he felt a presence, inches from his face. He could feel breath on his cheek, could sense someone standing in his personal space, so close he should be able to touch them. "Marcus," Morrison whispered. "Please. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry for what we did to Lily. Sorry." The voice came from right beside his ear, raspy and hollow. "You're sorry. 3 years you've been sorry, but you never came forward. Never confessed. Never faced justice." The lights flickered back on. Morrison stood alone in his bathroom. No one else was there. But on the mirror, written in condensation, as if traced by an invisible finger, were 2 words. Robert Ashford received the call about Chen's death while entertaining clients at his country club. He excused himself, stepped into the private lounge, and poured himself 3 fingers of scotch with shaking hands. 2 dead. Reeves and Chen, only himself, Winters. And Morrison left. Ashford had tried to forget about Lily Holloway, had buried the memory under layers of success and denial. But now it clawed its way back, vivid and terrible. He remembered her face, her tears, her muffled screams through the gag. He remembered how they'd laughed, how Reeves had filmed everything, how Morrison had assured them they'd never face consequences. "We're untouchable," Morrison had said. "Trust me." Ashford pulled out his phone, dialed Morrison's number. It rang 8 times before the detective answered. "He's coming for us," Ashford said without preamble. "Holloway. He's somehow doing this." We need to confess," Morrison interrupted. His voice sounded hollow, defeated. "It's the only way to stop this. We turn ourselves in, tell the truth about what we did. Are you insane? We'd spend the rest of our lives in prison. Better than whatever Holloway has planned for us." Morrison's laugh was bitter. "I've been seeing him, Robert. In mirrors, in windows, in the shadows. He's everywhere. And I don't think he's entirely human anymore." Ashford hung up, his mind racing. Confess? Absolutely not. He'd worked too hard, built too much to throw it all away on a coward's guilt. There had to be another option. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your daughter Emily is 17 now. Same age Lily was? Ashford's heart stopped. Emily. They knew about Emily. Another text arrived. She has swimming practice tomorrow at 4 p.m. The parking lot gets very empty after 5. No, Ashford whispered. No. Not my daughter. Please. His phone rang. Unknown number. With trembling fingers, Ashford answered. Mr. Ashford. The voice was Marcus Holloway's, but wrong-layered, as if multiple voices spoke in unison. Now you understand. Now you feel what I felt. The helplessness. The terror of knowing your child is in danger and you can't protect them. Please, Ashford begged, tears streaming down his face. I'll do anything. I'll confess. I'll turn myself in. Just don't hurt Emily. She's innocent. She had nothing to do with Lily was innocent too. The line went dead. Ashford ran from the country club, barely aware of the shocked looks from his colleagues. He had to get to Emily's school, had to keep her safe. But as he fumbled for his car keys, he saw them gray eyes, watching from every window of every car in the parking lot. Dozens of reflections, all Marcus Holloway. All staring with that same unblinking intensity. Ashford's mind finally shattered. He collapsed beside his BMW, sobbing, clutching his phone. When the country club security found him 20 minutes later, Robert Ashford was catatonic, his eyes wide and unseeing, his mouth moving soundlessly. The paramedics loaded him into an ambulance, but he never recovered. He remained in that state for the rest of his life, aware, conscious, but trapped in an endless nightmare of gray eyes watching his daughter, forever unable to protect her. Dr. Evelyn Ross sat in her office at Blackwood, reviewing files and trying to make sense of the impossible. 3 men, dead or destroyed within days of each other, Reeves, Chen, and now Ashford. All connected to the same case. All connected to Marcus Holloway, who hadn't left his room except he had, somehow. His consciousness. His will. His rage, whatever it was that made Marcus. Who he was had transcended the physical limitations of his catatonic body. Her phone rang. Detective Morrison. Dr. Ross, I need your help. His voice was barely above a whisper. I need to see Holloway. I need to confess. To him. To Lily. To God. I can't carry this anymore. Detective, Marcus is a psychiatric patient, not a priest. Whatever you did, I helped rape and torture a 17-year-old girl, Morrison said flatly. Then I used my badge to make sure we all walked free. And when she killed herself, I told myself it wasn't my fault. But it was. All of it was. Evelyn closed her eyes. Come to the hospital tomorrow. I'll arrange a session. But Morrison, whatever happens, whatever Marcus does to you, he's done it without moving from his bed. I don't know how to stop him. I don't want you to stop him. I deserve whatever's coming. The next morning, Detective James Morrison walked into Blackwood Psychiatric Hospital wearing civilian clothes. No badge, no gun, he'd left both at home. He looked like he'd aged 20 years overnight, his eyes sunken. His skin-gray dot Evelyn led him to the interview room where Marcus sat, unchanged, those gray eyes fixed on the far wall. But when Morrison entered, Marcus's gaze shifted, locking on to the detective with an intensity that made the air feel thick. Hello, James, Marcus said quietly. Thank you for coming. I've been watching you for so long, waiting for this moment. Morrison sank into the chair across from him, his hands clasped, as if in prayer. I'm sorry. God, Marcus, I'm so sorry for what we did to Lily. There's no excuse. No justification. We were monsters, and I used my position to make sure we never faced justice. I've been a coward every day since, as Marcus agreed. You have. Kill me, or drive me mad like Ashford. Whatever you're going to do, just do it. I can't live with this anymore. Marcus tilted his head, studying Morrison like a specimen under glass. You know what the worst part was? Not the attack itself, though that was horrific enough. It was the aftermath. Watching my daughter break apart piece by piece, knowing the men who'd destroyed her walked free. Watching the justice system I'd always believed in prove itself a lie. I know. Morrison's voice cracked. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry. Marcus repeated the word, tasting it. Reeves was sorry too at the end. So was Chen. Ashford's mind shattered before he could articulate it, but I felt his regret. Sorry doesn't bring Lily back. Sorry doesn't undo what you did. Then what do you want from me? Marcus leaned forward, his eyes boring into Morrison's soul. I want you to live. I want you to confess everything publicly, completely, with evidence. I want you to name names, describe details, hold nothing back. I want the world to know exactly what you and the others did to my daughter. Morrison blinked, surprised. That's all? No. Marcus's smile was terrifying. I want you to live with it. Every day, I want you to wake up and remember that you helped destroy an innocent girl. I want you to face the other inmates in prison who hate predators like you. I want you to spend decades knowing that everyone knows what you are. Death would be mercy, James. And I'm not feeling merciful. Morrison nodded slowly. Okay, yes, I'll do it. I'll confess everything, starting now. Marcus gestured to Dr. Ross. She's recording this. Start talking. Carl Winters had been the quietest of the 5 men, always in the background, always letting others take the lead. He'd participated that night. Certainly he'd been there. He'd contributed to Lily's suffering, but he told himself he was just following along. Just one of the guys now, sitting in his apartment with all the lights on and every curtain drawn. Winters realized how pathetic that excuse sounded. He'd been 25 years old that night, old enough to know better, old enough to stop it. But he'd been too much of a coward, just like he was being a coward now. Hiding in his apartment while Morrison confessed everything to the police. The news had broken an hour ago. Detective James Morrison's full confession implicating himself, Reeves, Chen, Ashford, us, and Winters in the assault of Lily Holloway. The evidence Morrison provided was overwhelming: text messages, photos, even parts of the video they'd filmed. The media was having a field day. The police were already on their way to arrest Winters. His phone buzzed. Another death threat. He'd received hundreds in the past hour, since Morrison's confession aired. People knew his name now, knew his face, knew what he'd done. This isn't how it was supposed to go, Winters muttered. We were supposed to get away with it. We were supposed to. The lights went out. Winters fumbled for his phone flashlight, his breath coming in short gasps. In the darkness, he felt it again, that sensation of being watched, of something patient and malevolent sharing his space. His voice was a whisper. Holloway. Are you here? I've always been here, Carl. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Watching, waiting, making sure you all paid for what you did to my daughter. A figure materialized in the corner of the room, Marcus Holloway. His gray eyes reflecting the phone's weak light, Morrison confessed. Winters said quickly, I'm going to prison. Isn't that enough? Isn't that justice? Justice. Marcus stepped closer, his movements slow and deliberate. You want to talk about justice? You helped destroy my daughter's life, then walked free for 3 years while she suffered and died. 3 years, Carl. Do you know what 3 years of torture feels like? I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I was young and stupid, and you were 25. You knew exactly what you were doing. Marcus was inches away now, his unblinking eyes filling Winters' vision. But you're right. Morrison's confession will put you in prison. The evidence is overwhelming. You'll spend the next 20 years behind bars, at minimum. Winters felt a surge of hope. Then, you're letting me go? You got your revenge? Marcus's smile was cold. Oh, Carl, my revenge isn't putting you in prison. My revenge is making sure you never feel safe there. Every night when you close your eyes, I'll be there. Every shadow, every reflection, every moment of peace you try to find, I'll be watching. Always watching. Never blinking. Never stopping. Until the day you die or go mad, whichever comes first. The lights flickered back on. Marcus was gone. but Winters could still feel those eyes on him, burning into the back of his skull. He knew with absolute certainty that Marcus Holloway had meant every word. And as the police sirens grew closer, Carl Winters began to scream. 3 months later, Dr. Evelyn Ross sat across from Marcus Holloway one final time. The case had concluded. Morrison was in prison, his confession having triggered a complete investigation that revealed even more victims, more crimes covered up by the 5 men. Winters was in solitary confinement at a maximum security facility after 3 separate suicide attempts. Ashford remained catatonic in a long-term care facility. The families of the other victims had reached out to Marcus, thanking him, though they didn't understand how he'd accomplished what the justice system couldn't. The media had dubbed him the Watcher, painting him as a tragic figure driven to extremes by a broken system. And Marcus himself had changed. For the first time in 3 years, Evelyn watched as Marcus Holloway blinked. "It's over," he said quietly. "They've all paid. Justice, however twisted, has been served." "What happens now?" Evelyn asked. "You've been catatonic for 3 years. Technically, you never left this hospital, but we both know you were elsewhere." "I was everywhere I needed to be." Marcus looked at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. "The grief and rage opened something in me, Dr. Ross. Some door that shouldn't exist. I poured everything I was into revenge, into making them suffer as Lily suffered. And now I'm just tired." Marcus looked at her, and for the first time, she saw the broken father beneath the vengeful specter. "Lily's gone. No amount of revenge will bring her back. I've destroyed 5 men, but I can't undo what they did to her. I can't go back and save her." Evelyn reached across the table, taking his hand, a gesture she'd never dared before. "No, but you can help make sure it doesn't happen to others." Morrison's confession triggered investigations into dozens of cases. Other victims are finally being heard. The system that failed Lily is being forced to change. Marcus nodded slowly. "That's something, I suppose." "The district attorney has decided not to press charges against you for Reeves' death. The circumstances are too unusual, and given everything that's come to light about what those men did, public opinion is entirely in your favor. You're free to leave, Marcus, whenever you're ready." Free. The word felt foreign. Marcus had been imprisoned by grief for so long, he'd forgotten what freedom felt like. "I'd like to visit Lily's grave," he said quietly. "I haven't been there since I started all this. I need to tell her it's over, that they paid, that she can rest now. I'll arrange it." The small garden behind the modest house was Marcus Holloway's favorite place now. He'd moved out of the city, away from the memories, and found a quiet town where people didn't recognize him. He spent his days tending to flowers Lily's favorites, daisies and sunflowers that turned their faces toward the sun. He'd started a foundation in her name, providing support and legal resources for assault victims whose cases weren't being properly investigated. The foundation was funded by the settlement he'd received from the city after it was revealed that Detective Morrison had actively suppressed evidence in Lily's case. Marcus still didn't blink very often. Some habits, once formed under extreme circumstances, were hard to break. But his eyes held warmth now. Sadness, yes, but also purpose. Hope, even in small doses. He'd received a letter last week from one of the other victims. Morrison's confession had helped. She'd written about finally getting justice, about being believed, about starting to heal. She'd thanked Marcus for not giving up, for showing her that monsters could be held accountable. Reading that letter, Marcus had cried for the first time since Lily's funeral. Not tears of rage or grief, but of something else. Relief, maybe, or the beginning of peace. He knew he'd never fully heal from losing Lily. That wound would stay with him until his last breath. But he was learning to live alongside the grief, to channel it into something that helped others rather than destroyed them. Every Sunday, Marcus visited Lily's grave. He'd sit beside her headstone, tell her about the foundation, about the victims they'd helped, about the flowers in his garden. Sometimes he imagined he could feel her presence, proud of him, forgiving him for the darkness he'd embraced. "I love you, baby girl," he whispered to the wind. "I'll always love you. And I promise I'll make sure what happened to you helps others. Your light will keep shining, even if you're not here to see it." As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Marcus Holloway closed his eyes, truly closed them. Resting them completely for the first time in years, the watching was over. The revenge was complete. Now, finally, it was time to heal.